For more than 20 years of consultations, I have heard the same words repeated with a mix of resignation and sadness. Doctor, I have already tried everything, but I think only the scalpel can help me. Behind that sentence, there is much more than a medical diagnosis. It is the reflection of a generation of men who are raised to believe that their body deteriorates inevitably with age and that the only possible solution is to undergo invasive procedures. Every day, men over 50 arrive feeling that they have lost control over an intimate part of their life, the one that gave them independence and confidence. The nighttime urgency, the dripping, the tiredness, all become symbols of defeat, as if aging were an unavoidable sentence. What hurts the most is that this idea has settled so deeply in the collective mind that even healthy men, with small symptoms, already think about surgery as their destiny. But the truth is that they are not sick in the way they have been made to believe. They are simply uninformed. Science and clinical experience show that in most cases, the scalpel is not the answer. It is the result of fear that has been poorly managed and of a system that has forgotten to teach men about prevention and self-care. We live in a time where people talk a lot about wellness, but very little about the health of the aging man, about his fears, his dignity, and his intimate life. For that reason, when a man comes to my office with that look of hopelessness, the first thing I try to give back is not a prescription or a diagnosis, but a spark of confidence. I explain that the solution can be much simpler than they imagine, and that in many cases, it is literally in their own home, waiting to be discovered. This message is not only medical, it is human. Because recovering prostate health is not only about urinating better or sleeping without interruption, but about recovering the feeling of freedom, self-esteem, and the security of being able to live without fear. For decades, large pharmaceutical companies have built an empire around fear. They have learned how to dress worry in a white coat and to sell anxiety as if it were science. Every advertisement, every medical pamphlet, every visit from a representative has been weaving a story that makes mature men believe that their body is a defective machine that needs constant repair. We have been taught to see the prostate as a time bomb, an organ that will inevitably fail and whose only salvation will come in the form of a pill or a scalpel. This message has been repeated so many times that nobody questions it anymore. And yet, behind that apparent concern for health, what exists is a system designed to keep you dependent, not to give you back control. The most harmful part of this system is its subtlety. They do not openly tell you to depend on them, they simply get you used to doing so. They prescribe one pill for prevention, another one to sleep better, and before you know it, your nightstand becomes a small laboratory. Meanwhile, your body, which has an immense natural potential to regenerate itself, becomes more asleep, more passive, more disconnected from its own biological wisdom. The industry does not earn money when you heal. It earns money when you stay in between, when the relief is temporary and the problem persists just enough so that you return the following month. In consultations, many men tell me with frustration that they have taken medications for years without noticing any real improvement. The urgency continues, the sleep continues to be interrupted, the feeling of dependency increases. And this is not a coincidence. Chemical compounds, even though they relieve symptoms, do not address the root of the problem. They only temporarily numb an inflamed and tense system while the imbalance grows silently. The uncomfortable truth is that the industry benefits more from a chronic patient than from a free and healthy man. But there is something even deeper. The fear they generate becomes a mental barrier. Many men, even before trying a natural change, already distrust its effectiveness because it does not come in a box or with an instruction leaflet. They have been conditioned to believe that what is complex is what cures, and that a simple remedy cannot work. This way of thinking has stolen from millions of people the possibility of reconnecting with their own body. Breaking that narrative is an act of courage, a challenge to the power of fear, and a commitment to the authenticity of health. That is why, when I say that the solution may be in your home, it is not a poetic metaphor. It is a scientific and human truth. The body, if it receives what is right, has an infinite capacity to heal. Before continuing, I would love to know something so we can connect with our community. From which city or country are you watching us? Write it in the comments. I love knowing the people who really care about their health, and this allows me to create content that is more useful and more relevant for you and for your region. Let us get to the point. All over the world, millions of men share the same silence. An uncomfortable silence made of interrupted nights, constant trips to the bathroom, and that constant feeling of not completely emptying the bladder. At first, one thinks it is something temporary, a small annoyance, a sign of age. But with time, that small detail begins to shape the routine, to affect rest, and, little by little, also self-esteem. Many men feel ashamed to talk about it because society has taught them that showing weakness in intimate matters is a sign of losing masculinity. In this way, the problem grows in silence while the mind learns to live with discomfort and the body keeps sending signals that nobody listens to. In that silent routine, hopelessness becomes a companion. Some men stop sleeping deeply because they are afraid of wetting the bed or simply because the body no longer rests the same. Others avoid long trips, meetings, or social activities for fear of not finding a bathroom in time. What seems like a simple annoyance becomes a constant limitation. And although many hide it with a smile or with phrases like, "I am already old," inside they feel frustration, anger, and a deep sense of loss. It is not only a physical problem, but also an emotional exhaustion that slowly erodes confidence. Added to this reality is the lack of understanding from the people around them. Rarely does a partner, a child, or a friend truly understand what it means to live with constant pressure. Some men hide their discomfort because they do not want to worry their family or because they believe that admitting it would be a defeat. Others, tired of not seeing results, abandon their treatments or stop consulting. And so the problem continues to grow, not only in the body, but also in the mind. Masculinity is wounded, not by the condition itself, but by the idea that asking for help or seeking natural alternatives is a sign of weakness. But the truth is that this silent reality should not be lived alone. Prostate health is not a sentence and not an inevitable curse. It is a signal from the body asking for balance, rest, and attention. When a man understands this, he stops seeing himself as a victim of his age and begins to understand that he still has the power to improve his well-being. That understanding transforms hopelessness into action and silence into knowledge. Because what millions of men live today can change completely if the barrier of fear is broken and one begins to listen to what the body has been trying to say for years. To understand what happens in the male body as the years go by, it is necessary to look beyond the symptoms. Inside the pelvis, just below the bladder, there is the prostate, a small gland but one with great influence on a man's health and sexual life. Its main function is to produce prostatic fluid, an essential component of semen, but its strategic location also makes it a key point for urinary and hormonal balance. When the body ages, this gland tends to increase in size. As it does so, it begins to press against the urethra, the channel that carries urine out of the body. That pressure generates the sensation of incomplete emptying, the dripping after urination, and the constant need to urinate, even during the night. However, the problem is not only physical. What happens inside the body also affects the mind. Each nighttime trip to the bathroom represents a disruption of rest, and that lack of sleep affects mood, concentration, and sexual desire. The man begins to feel tired, less vital, and his confidence decreases. At a hormonal level, the gradual decrease in testosterone and the rise in stress contribute to making the problem worse. The body becomes less efficient at regulating fluids, the pelvic muscles lose strength, and circulation in the prostate area slows down. All of this creates a vicious circle. The more tired and stressed the body is, the worse the prostate responds, and the worse the prostate works, the greater the emotional stress becomes. From an emotional perspective, many men experience this stage as a threat to their identity. They associate masculinity with control, power, and performance, so facing a physical difficulty in that area can feel like a deep wound. It is common for thoughts of insecurity to appear, fears of losing desire within the relationship, or even shame about acknowledging what is happening. But understanding the problem also means recognizing that the body is not failing, it is asking for balance. The prostate, like any other organ, responds to nutrition, exercise, rest, and above all, accumulated stress. For that reason, the anatomical view cannot be separated from the emotional view. When a man learns to observe his body without judgment, with attention and respect, he begins to notice that every symptom has a cause and a message. Inflammation does not appear out of nowhere. It comes from excess tension, from chronic fatigue, and from habits maintained for years. Listening to the body becomes the first step toward recovery, because behind every discomfort there is an opportunity for change. Understanding what happens inside oneself is opening the door to integral health, not only to relieve the prostate, but also to recover the sense of well-being and control over one's own life. For years, most men have heard that the size of the prostate is what determines their urinary or sexual problems. In medical offices, the idea is repeated again and again that if the gland grows, everything becomes complicated, and that if it shrinks, the symptoms will disappear. But that view is incomplete and, in many cases, misleading. It is not only a matter of size, but of functionality. Inside the body, there is a group of muscles invisible to the naked eye, the pelvic floor muscles, which play a role as important or even more important than the prostate itself. This muscular group surrounds the urethra, supports the internal organs, and participates both in urination and erection. When these muscles lose strength or elasticity, the pressure on the bladder and urethra increases, making symptoms worse without there necessarily being a significant prostate enlargement. The problem is that almost no one talks about this hidden muscle. In traditional medical education, all the emphasis is placed on the gland, the medications, and the surgeries, but it is rarely mentioned that the male pelvic floor can be trained, strengthened, and regain its tone naturally. Most men do not know that the lack of movement, a sedentary lifestyle, and long hours sitting at a desk slowly weaken this area. The body becomes accustomed to rigidity, blood circulation decreases, and the connection between the mind and the pelvis shuts down. From that point on, urine is retained, the muscles do not respond with the same coordination, and control over the flow is lost little by little. In addition, the pelvic floor is closely connected with breathing and the spine. Each deep breath naturally massages the pelvis, supporting venous return and tissue oxygenation. But daily stress and shallow breathing block that process. When a man learns to breathe consciously and activate these muscles, he begins to notice visible changes. The stream of urine becomes stronger, the sensation of emptying improves, and confidence is restored. It is not magic. It is pure biology that modern medicine has forgotten in its obsession with the scalpel and the pills. In reality, the hidden muscle no one talks about can be the true ally of the mature man. Regaining its strength means giving the body back its natural capacity for control and balance. It means understanding that surgery or medication is not always needed to improve, but instead a new relationship with one's own body. Strengthening the pelvic base is like reinforcing the foundation of a house. It is invisible from the outside, but essential for everything else to work. That is why the mistake is not worrying about the prostate, but forgetting the system that surrounds it, supports it, and gives it life. When that forgotten muscle is rediscovered, a path of true recovery begins, one that is born from knowledge and not from fear. The body of a mature man is a system that precisely reflects the way he lives, thinks, and eats. The prostate, although small, is one of the glands most sensitive to the physical and emotional environment. Many men look for external culprits when symptoms begin, but they rarely look at the three factors that silently and constantly deteriorate their prostate health: chronic stress, unbalanced nutrition, and a sedentary lifestyle. These three enemies act together, like a slow but devastating storm, altering circulation, hormones, and the body's ability to regenerate. Stress, in particular, is one of the most powerful poisons. When a man lives under constant pressure, his body releases cortisol, a hormone that in small doses is useful, but in excess causes inflammation and blocks testosterone production. That inflammation leads to pelvic congestion, muscle tension, and urinary changes. It is common for men with work or emotional stress to feel the need to urinate more often or even experience erectile dysfunction, not because their prostate has grown, but because their body lives in a permanent state of alert. In that state, blood flow is diverted away from the abdomen toward the limbs, as if they were running from danger. What should be a calm and natural process becomes a physiological battle. Diet, for its part, can be either an ally or an enemy. Excess processed meats, alcohol, sugar, and saturated fats feed inflammation and alter hormonal balance. When a man gets used to eating quickly, drinking without control, or skipping meals, his body loses the ability to detoxify effectively. Prostate cells become more sensitive, urine flow weakens, and discomfort appears that is interpreted as inevitable aging. But it is not age, it is accumulated lifestyle. It is enough to observe men who adopt a diet rich in vegetables, seeds, whole grains, and water at regular times. In just a few weeks, their body changes, inflammation decreases, and the feeling of heaviness disappears. The third enemy, the sedentary lifestyle, is perhaps the most deceptive because it acts without immediate pain. Spending hours sitting, driving long distances, or working in front of a computer without breaks compresses the pelvis and reduces the oxygenation of the tissues. That constant pressure interrupts circulation in the prostate area and weakens the muscles that should maintain a stable urinary flow. Over time, this inactivity creates a vicious cycle in which less movement means less blood supply, and less blood supply means more tension and stagnation. To reverse this process, a man needs to reconnect with his body. Simple activities like walking every day, practicing deep breathing, or doing specific stretches can radically transform pelvic health. It is not about becoming an athlete, but about reactivating circulation and bringing life back to a forgotten area. Stress, poor diet, and inactivity are not unavoidable punishments, but accumulated decisions. The good news is that every conscious choice in the opposite direction, no matter how small, begins to free the body from the inflammatory cycle. When a man understands that his prostate does not become sick on its own, but reflects the way he lives, the real power appears, the power to regain control. Among all the natural solutions that science and tradition have placed within reach, few possess the silent and profound strength of pumpkin seed oil. For centuries, it was a home remedy in different cultures throughout Europe and the Americas, used not only for digestive issues, but also as a masculine tonic. With time, modern medicine confirmed what ancient people already knew through observation. This oil is a direct ally of prostate health. Its richness in essential fatty acids, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds makes it an integral tool that works from the inside, calming bodily tension and restoring hormonal balance. When a man begins to take it consistently, he is not just consuming a supplement, he is sending a message to his body. He is choosing to nourish and repair instead of attack or suppress. Pumpkin seed oil does not work with the aggressive speed of chemical medications, but its action is deeper and more lasting. It feeds the cell membranes, improves tissue elasticity, and reduces inflammation without disrupting the natural hormonal system. Instead of forcing the prostate to behave in an artificial way, it restores its original rhythm, allowing the body to regain its own control. Men who incorporate it into their daily routine often first notice a sense of relief. The urinary flow becomes more consistent, urgency decreases, and the feeling of pelvic heaviness begins to fade. This improvement is not magic, but the result of tissue that stops being inflamed and begins to receive the nutrients it was lacking. In addition, this oil has a protective effect on the bladder, helping reduce the irritation that causes frequent nighttime urination. But its power goes beyond the urinary system. It also helps the heart, metabolism, and skin because its antioxidant compounds cleanse the blood vessels and improve general circulation. It is a complete form of care, not a temporary treatment. For this reason, it should be seen as part of a lifestyle rather than a simple miracle capsule. When combined with good sleep habits, a balanced diet, and gentle exercises, its effect multiplies. The body, when it feels cared for, responds with balance and strength. The man who incorporates this oil is not only taking care of his prostate, He is taking care of his dignity. He is choosing not to surrender to fear or depend forever on a prescription. It is an act of recovering personal power, a daily commitment to his well-being. Just as a tree needs strong roots to remain standing, the male body needs to be nourished from within to maintain vitality. In every spoonful of this oil, there is the promise of health built with patience, knowledge, and respect for one's own body. Pumpkin seed oil is not a magical cure or a passing trick. Its strength lies in its natural composition and in the way it interacts with the cells of the male body. Every drop of this oil is filled with essential fatty acids, especially omega-6 and omega-9, which act as internal lubricants. These healthy fats penetrate the cell membranes, restoring their flexibility and allowing inflamed tissues to recover their ability to regenerate. At the prostate level, this translates into a progressive reduction of inflammation, relief from pelvic pain, and a remarkable improvement in urinary flow. But its action does not stop there. One of its most valuable components is zinc, an essential mineral involved in testosterone production and immune function. When the body receives the proper amount of natural zinc, the prostate remains protected against abnormal tissue growth. At the same time, sexual hormones become balanced, especially the relationship between testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, a more active form which, when produced in excess, can stimulate prostate enlargement. This hormonal balance is one of the quiet keys to male wellness. Many men experience fatigue, lack of desire, or frequent urination without knowing that behind all of this there is a hormonal imbalance. Pumpkin seed oil acts as a gentle regulator, helping the body return to its point of harmony. At the cellular level, the oil also acts as a powerful antioxidant. Its phenolic compounds fight free radicals, those small unstable molecules that damage tissues and accelerate aging. When free radicals are neutralized, prostate cells breathe better, blood flow improves, and repair processes activate naturally. This antioxidant effect explains why many men also notice improvements in their skin, energy, and even mood. A body that is less inflamed and more oxygenated is a body that functions with fullness. Another important mechanism is its effect on the urinary system and the bladder. The oil helps relax the detrusor muscle, which is responsible for contracting to expel urine. When this muscle is tense or irritated, the feeling of urgency increases and the bladder cannot empty completely. By relaxing this tension, the oil allows a more complete emptying, reducing the need to get up several times during the night. Rest improves and the body enters a cycle of true recovery. In addition, its anti-inflammatory action not only protects the prostate, but also the blood vessels surrounding it. This improves pelvic circulation and enhances erectile function because both processes depend on blood flow that is free from obstructions. Many men who begin taking this oil for prostate purposes discover, almost unexpectedly, that their intimate performance improves and their confidence returns. It is not a secondary effect, but a logical consequence of bodily balance. Finally, there is a more subtle yet equally important aspect, the mind-body connection. When a man commits to his well-being consciously, when each morning he takes his dose knowing that he is nourishing his health and not running away from fear, his nervous system also responds. Inner calm reduces the production of cortisol, the body relaxes, and the organs function in harmony. Pumpkin seed oil becomes not only a food for the prostate, but also a symbol of self-care, respect, and presence. It is not simply a supplement. It is a daily reminder that health is built with attention, knowledge, and consistency. Mr. Robert was 68 years old when he decided to change the course of his life. For years, he had lived with constant discomfort while urinating, nights interrupted by the urgency to get up again and again, and a sense of fatigue that followed him throughout the day. His doctor had prescribed several medications, but the side effects were almost as bothersome as the problem itself. One day, while talking with a friend in a local park, he heard about pumpkin seed oil and decided to try it without high expectations. What happened in the following months transformed his understanding of health. At first, he noticed small changes. He slept a little better, his urine flowed more easily, and his mood seemed more stable. However, what surprised him the most was his emotional recovery. He began to feel he was regaining control of his body, that his masculinity did not depend on a pill or a surgical intervention. 3 months later, the results were evident. His doctor, astonished, confirmed that the size of his prostate had slightly decreased and that his inflammatory markers had gone down. Robert had not only found physical relief, but also a renewed confidence in himself. He went back to walking every morning, returned to tending his garden, and rediscovered the pleasure of feeling useful. But Robert's story is not an isolated case. In recent years, more and more men over 50 have begun to look for natural and sustainable alternatives. Mr. Ernest, for example, a retired schoolteacher from the Midwest, used to say that his greatest fear was not illness, but the loss of dignity. When he began practicing breathing techniques and combining pumpkin seed oil with small adjustments in his diet, he noticed a profound improvement. Instead of depending on chemicals, his body began to respond with balance. His wife said that even his personality had changed. He was no longer irritable and tired, but more patient, attentive, and with a calmness he had not shown in years. Another interesting case is Mark, a 55-year-old man who had gone through a period of intense work-related stress. The pressures of his job, the lack of sleep, and a disorganized diet led him to develop prostate symptoms at an early age. After reading about the benefits of the oil and consulting with a specialist in natural medicine, he decided to start a comprehensive program. He changed his habits, incorporated the oil into his meals, and began practicing the technique of double voiding every night. In only 6 weeks, his quality of life had visibly improved. Mark said that beyond the physical benefits, the most valuable part was regaining the feeling of control over his well-being. Although different, these stories share one common point. All these men understood that male health is not only about removing symptoms, but about transforming the relationship with one's own body. Each testimony is a lesson in consistency and self-knowledge. Robert used to tell those who listened that the real change did not begin with the oil, but with the decision to believe that his body could heal. In a small study carried out in 2023 among a group of men over 60 years old, it was observed that those who combined natural supplements with relaxation techniques and a balanced diet showed a 30% reduction in prostate symptoms compared to those who only used conventional medications. Although the names of these men do not appear in scientific journals, their silent stories reflect a profound truth. When the root of the problem is cared for, the body responds with wisdom. Robert, Ernest, and Mark represent 3 different paths that lead to the same destination: the freedom to live without fear, without dependence, and with the awareness that male health does not end with age. They showed that knowledge and consistency are the most powerful medicine, and that each decision of self-care is a victory over resignation. Pumpkin seed oil is a jewel of nature that, when used correctly, can become a powerful ally for prostate balance and overall wellness. Not all oils are the same, and understanding their differences is essential to achieving the best results. The most recommended type is the extra virgin oil obtained through cold pressing, since it preserves all the bioactive properties of the seeds. Its dark green color and slightly toasted flavor are signs of authenticity. Refined oils, on the other hand, lose part of their antioxidant compounds and their ability to protect cells from aging and inflammation. The ideal dosage may vary depending on the person, but most experts in natural medicine agree that 2 tablespoons a day are enough to notice real changes. The recommended approach is to take one in the morning on an empty stomach to activate digestion and prepare the hormonal system, and another at night, preferably before dinner or right after, to facilitate rest and cellular regeneration during sleep. This regularity allows the body to steadily absorb the fatty acids and natural zinc present in the oil, essential elements for healthy prostate function. Incorporating the oil into the diet can be done easily. Some prefer to consume it directly, while others add it to salads, warm soups, or steamed vegetables. Cooking with it is not recommended because excessive heat destroys part of its beneficial compounds. What matters most is maintaining consistency and allowing the body to gradually accumulate its effects. In men who continue its consumption for 3 or more months, the results are usually more evident: less inflammation, better urinary flow, and a stable sense of energy. There are, however, precautions worth considering. Although it is a natural product, the oil can be heavy on the stomach if taken in excess or with very fatty meals. It is also important to verify its source, avoiding low-quality products or adulterated mixtures sold as pure. Choosing an oil with organic certification ensures that the seeds were not treated with pesticides or chemical solvents. In cases of metabolic conditions or food allergies, consulting a professional before beginning daily use is recommended. An interesting practice is to combine pumpkin seed oil with other foods or extracts that enhance its effects. For example, consuming small amounts of fresh ginger or turmeric helps reduce systemic inflammation and improves nutrient absorption. In the same way, pairing the oil with foods rich in vitamin E, such as almonds or avocado, boosts its antioxidant capacity. Some natural health practitioners even suggest mixing a teaspoon of the oil with a little pure honey to support digestion and circulation. Schedules also play a fundamental role. Taking it on an empty stomach allows the body to absorb it without digestive interference, while taking it at night contributes to hormonal balance and deep rest. This routine helps stabilize free testosterone levels and keeps the prostate in a less congested state. Many men who adopt this practice notice not only physical improvements, but also a change in their emotional state. They feel calmer, less anxious, and with a more natural vitality. Finally, the key lies in perseverance. Pumpkin seed oil is not a magical or immediate solution, but a faithful companion in the healing process. Every drop taken represents a gesture of respect toward one's own body and an act of independence from invasive methods. When combined with mindful eating, good hydration, and healthy habits, the result goes beyond the physical. It is a deep transformation that restores balance, energy, and confidence. The double voiding technique is one of those simple gestures that seem too modest to create real change, yet in truth represent a silent revolution in the functioning of the male body. Many men spend years feeling that their bladder never empties completely, as if a final trapped drop always remained, turning into urgency, dribbling, or discomfort. This sensation affects not only the physical aspect, but also the emotional one. It creates insecurity, impatience, and a tense relationship with one's own body. However, when a man learns to urinate with awareness and patience, the difference can be felt from the very first days. The essence of double voiding lies in giving the body enough time to complete the process. Urinating is not a mechanical and automatic act as many believe, but a precise coordination between the bladder muscles, the urinary sphincter, and the prostate. When a man finishes urinating and immediately walks away, those muscles often remain tense and unable to release the entire content. Double voiding suggests pausing after the first emptying, remaining still for a few seconds, breathing deeply, and leaning slightly forward to allow the body to release what remained trapped. This simple gesture opens a space of relaxation that the urinary system needs in order to function without obstacles. Many men are surprised to discover that when applying this technique, the second stream of urine appears with unexpected ease, as if it had been waiting for that small moment of pause to come out. That second release is the key, because it eliminates the residual urine that usually generates immediate urgency. The difference between living with or without residual urine is enormous. When the bladder is completely emptied, the man experiences a deep sense of relief, internal lightness, and full control. This results in fewer trips to the bathroom, calmer nights, and a more comfortable everyday life. In addition, double voiding has an important emotional impact. It forces the man to slow down, to listen to his body, and to let go of the rush that often dominates his life. Turning that extra minute into a habit means cultivating patience, attention, and respect toward oneself. Over time, this technique naturally integrates into the daily routine and stops being a conscious effort, becoming instead an automatic act of self-care. Men who adopt this practice often say they feel calmer, less frustrated, and more connected to the true sensation of emptying. Practicing it requires consistency, but not sacrifices. It is not an invasive treatment or a complicated method. It only asks for a moment of attention and a willingness to change an old habit. In a society that demands speed in everything, this technique becomes a silent reminder that the body needs time to function as it should. Respecting that time is a simple, natural, and deeply effective way to improve prostate health. The double voiding technique may seem like a simple habit, but behind it lies a very precise physiological logic that explains its effectiveness. Inside the male body, the bladder acts as a flexible reservoir made of muscular tissue known as the detrusor, responsible for contracting to expel urine. Just below it is the prostate, a small but powerful gland that tends to enlarge over the years due to hormonal changes and lifestyle factors. This growth, even when mild, puts pressure on the urethra and makes the complete passage of urinary flow more difficult. This is where double voiding shows its value because it helps the body complete a task it can no longer perform with the same efficiency on its own. During the first emptying, the bladder contracts and pushes most of the urine out, but a small amount remains trapped in the folds of the bladder neck or behind the prostate. This partial retention creates a sensation of incomplete emptying and, over time, can contribute to inflammation and urinary infections. When the man waits a few seconds before trying again, the detrusor relaxes momentarily, and this relaxation allows the residual liquid to move and become ready for elimination during the second attempt. In other words, it is not about forcing the body, but supporting its own natural rhythms of contraction and relaxation. Clinical studies conducted in Japan and Germany over the last decade have observed that men over 50 who adopt this practice significantly reduce the amount of residual urine and experience less nighttime urgency. At a university hospital in Munich, for example, a group of urologists recorded that after 6 weeks of daily application, the average amount of retained urine decreased by 40%. This change, although it may seem small in numbers, represents a radical improvement in quality of life because it means less pressure on the bladder, better night rest, and lower risk of infections. At the hormonal level, the practice also has an indirect effect. When the body learns to release urine more easily, the accumulated tension in the pelvic region decreases, which improves blood circulation and helps balance local levels of testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. This results in a general sense of well-being and vitality because the pelvic area is involved not only in urination, but also in sexual function. In fact, many men who adopt double voiding notice an improvement in the firmness of their erections and a reduction in pain or pressure at the base of the penis, which shows that the benefit goes beyond the bladder. Physiologically, this technique teaches the body to regain a balance it had lost. It does not require medications or external interventions, but rather a reconnection with one's own biological rhythm. The time dedicated to the second urination is a natural moment of recalibration, where the muscles coordinate with breathing and the nervous system stabilizes. The result is a more efficient and aware body, capable of releasing without tension what it no longer needs. And although it may seem like a small action, it represents a profound change in the relationship between the man, his body, and his intimate health. Mr. Joseph was 68 years old when he began to notice that something was not right. At first, it was small discomforts, a sudden urgency when leaving home, or the feeling that he needed to find a bathroom before any walk. Over time, those moments became more frequent and started to condition his life. He avoided long gatherings, trips, or meals with friends because he was afraid of having to stand up again and again. Although his wife insisted that he should consult a doctor, he resisted. He felt embarrassed to admit that he had trouble urinating because in his mind that meant losing part of his masculinity, and he preferred to stay silent rather than appear weak. One day, however, the situation overwhelmed him. During a family dinner, he had to get up 4 times to go to the bathroom, and even then he could not feel relief. That night, when he arrived home, he felt defeated. He remembered the words of an old friend who had gone through something similar and had told him about the double voiding technique. He decided to try it without many expectations. The first time he applied it, he barely noticed a change, but he continued doing it. On the 3rd night, he discovered that the feeling of pressure in his abdomen had decreased. After a week, he slept more peacefully and woke up only once instead of 3 or 4 times. Mr. Joseph's story reflects the reality of thousands of older men who live in silence, with a problem that deeply affects them, not only physically but also emotionally and socially. In many cultures, talking about these topics is still a taboo. Men are raised to endure, to never show vulnerability, and this leads them to ignore the signals of their body until the discomfort becomes unbearable. Mr. Joseph took years to understand that taking care of his intimate health was not a sign of weakness, but of intelligence and respect for himself. In one of his later checkups, he discovered that the constant practice of double voiding had greatly reduced the volume of residual urine and that his prostate was less inflamed. The doctor explained that this change was the result of improved pelvic muscle function and reduced stress on the bladder. Mr. Joseph felt proud of having trusted his body before turning to medication or surgery. From then on, he became a quiet advocate of the practice. When someone close to him confessed a similar problem, he shared his story naturally and without shame, showing that the experience had not only healed his body, but also transformed his relationship with masculinity. Cases like his show that prostate health is not limited to the physical aspect, but also includes the emotional and social realm. Many men live with fear of losing control, of being judged, or of feeling less masculine for talking about urinary or sexual difficulties. Mr. Joseph's story teaches that true control does not come from suppressing, but from knowing and caring for one's own body. Learning to listen to the signals, looking for natural solutions, and sharing the experience with others are acts of courage that can transform a life. His testimony is a reminder that male health does not begin in a doctor's office, but in the personal decision not to be dominated by fear or shame. The so-called 3-hour rule may seem like a small detail, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful and underestimated practices for improving prostate health. It consists of avoiding liquids, especially water, coffee, or alcohol, during the 3 hours before going to sleep. It may seem like a simple measure, but it has a deep effect on the balance of the urinary system and on nighttime rest, two factors closely linked to male well-being. When the body prepares for sleep, all organs reduce their activity and the nervous system enters a state of rest. However, if the bladder continues receiving liquid, it stays active and sends signals to the brain that interrupt that state of calm. The result is the typical wake-up in the middle of the night to urinate, an interruption that many men consider inevitable, but that can actually be prevented with the right habits. The importance of this rule is not only about avoiding nighttime discomfort, but also about protecting prostate function in the long term. The prostate and the bladder work together, like two parts of the same hydraulic system. When the bladder is forced to work constantly, even during the night, it puts pressure on the prostate, irritating it and promoting chronic inflammation. Many men do not realize that this silent inflammation is one of the most common causes of urinary problems that appear with age. Respecting the 3-hour rule means, in a way, giving the prostate a break, allowing it to recover and restore its internal balance while the rest of the body also rests. Prostate sleep hygiene goes beyond controlling liquid intake. It also involves creating a favorable environment for deep rest, which includes reducing bright screens before bedtime, eating dinner early, and keeping a stable room temperature. Good sleep not only regenerates the body, but also regulates the hormones involved in sexual and prostate health. Melatonin, for example, not only improves sleep, but has an antioxidant role that protects prostate tissues from oxidative stress. On the other hand, sleeping little or under constant stress alters testosterone production and raises cortisol levels, which contributes to prostate deterioration. A man who adopts this rule begins to notice changes in a few weeks. Nighttime urgency decreases, sleep becomes more restorative, and the mind wakes up clearer. Some even report improvements in their sexual desire, something that has a direct connection with proper rest and balanced hormonal function. A clear example is the case of a man who, after years of waking up to 5 times per night, began to apply this rule along with the double voiding technique. In less than a month, he reduced nighttime interruptions to a single one and regained the energy he thought he had lost. The key is consistency. It is not a miraculous remedy, but a daily act of conscious care. The 3-hour rule teaches the modern man to reconnect with the natural rhythm of his body. Instead of forcing it with medication or ignoring its signals, he learns to accompany it. It is a reminder that prostate health does not depend on expensive products, but on discipline, self-care, and respect for biological processes. Each night, by choosing to care for his rest, the man also chooses to preserve his vitality and intimate well-being. Perineal pressure is an ancient practice that, despite its simplicity, has a profound effect on prostate health and urinary function. It is based on the gentle stimulation of the area between the testicles and the anus, a zone known as the perineum, where a complex network of nerves, blood vessels, and muscles directly related to the prostate can be found. This technique aims to reactivate circulation in a region that, in modern life, remains almost always blocked by sedentary habits, incorrect posture, and accumulated tension. When blood flow to the pelvis is reduced, the prostate undergoes a process of congestion that promotes inflammation and the stagnation of toxins. Through perineal pressure, movement, and oxygen return to that area, promoting a natural regeneration that many men are unaware of. The procedure can be done easily, without the need for equipment or medical knowledge. It consists of applying firm but not painful pressure to the perineum, using the fingers or a rounded surface for a few minutes each day. The most important part is doing it with body awareness, breathing deeply and relaxing the muscles of the pelvis. This seemingly insignificant action stimulates lymphatic circulation, releases tension in the pelvic floor, and improves neuromuscular communication between the prostate and the bladder. Over time, many men notice a reduction in the sensation of pelvic heaviness, greater ease when urinating, and an improvement in the quality of their erections, since the area becomes better irrigated and more responsive. Perineal pressure should not be confused with an aggressive massage or excessive manipulation. One of the most common mistakes is applying too much force or doing the movement in a rushed, inattentive manner. The perineum is a sensitive region that responds better to consistency than to intensity. A couple of minutes a day done calmly are more effective than long or rough sessions. Another common mistake is practicing it during moments of extreme fatigue or immediately after eating, when the body is busy with other physiological processes. The ideal moment is in the morning after waking up or before going to bed, when the mind is calm and the body receptive. Beyond the physical aspect, this technique also has a psychological and energetic component. In many Eastern traditions, the perineum is considered the center of vital energy, the point where masculine strength and emotional stability originate. Activating it consciously not only improves circulation, but also helps men reconnect with their bodies, becoming aware of their sexuality from a perspective of health and balance rather than performance. That deep connection between mind and body is one of the most powerful pillars for preventing prostate problems and recovering confidence in oneself. The benefits of this practice usually appear gradually but consistently. After a few weeks, some men experience a general improvement in their well-being and noticeable relief from urinary discomfort. Others discover that their breathing becomes deeper and that their posture changes, since free and pelvic tension also helps align spine. In many cases, perineal pressure becomes a personal ritual of care, a quiet and effective way to remind the body that it is alive and deserves attention. The key to success lies in discipline and in the intention behind the practice. It is not a mechanical act, but a form of dialogue with one's own body. Each pressure, each breath, becomes a message of recovery and self-confidence. This way, a man learns that his health does not depend only on what he takes or avoids, but on the way he relates to his own body. Perineal pressure, in its apparent simplicity, carries an ancient wisdom, the wisdom of feeling and caring for the very center of masculine life. Caring for the prostate is not a single action nor a solution that comes from one technique or product. It is an inner process of transformation that requires consistency, understanding, and a deep change in the way a man relates to his own body. Many men, when they reach this stage of the journey, discover that what they truly needed was not a miraculous remedy, but the recovery of a sense of control over their health. They understand that true freedom begins when they stop living in fear and start listening to what their body has been trying to tell them for years. Consistency, more than an effort, becomes an act of self-love, a silent promise a man makes to himself every day. The male body does not respond to impulses driven by ego or impatience. It responds to respect, to the repetition of conscious gestures, and to the desire to heal without demanding immediate results. This is why each deep breath, each dietary change, and each small healthy habit adopted becomes one more stone on the path toward recovery. The mind also plays a fundamental role in this process because thoughts and emotions shape the way the body reacts. A man who lives worried, tense, or ashamed of his situation tends to block his vital energy, while one who accepts his process with calm and trust activates an inner power that medicine can barely explain. Recovering prostate health is also an act of reconciliation with masculinity. For too long, men have been taught to hide their fragility, to silence pain, and to pretend strength even when their body is asking for help. But true courage does not lie in ignoring suffering, but in facing it with clarity and patience. When a man allows himself to take care of his body without fear of judgment, he breaks a cultural chain that kept him trapped. He begins to understand that caring for his prostate is not a sign of weakness, but an expression of wisdom. This shift in mindset frees not only the body, but also the spirit. Freedom, in this context, does not mean living without rules, but choosing consciously how to care for oneself. The man who takes care of himself learns to say no to habits that harm him, to products that promise miracles, and to routines that drain his energy. He also learns to say yes to rest, calm, breathing, and deep contact with his own being. This kind of freedom cannot be bought and does not appear overnight. It is cultivated through daily practice, constant attention, and the commitment not to give up even when results take time to appear. Consistency is the tool that brings all the others together. Without it, no oil, technique, or exercise can have a real effect. Consistency is the discipline of trying again each day, even when fatigue or doubt arise. It means understanding that the body needs time to regenerate and that deep healing is not measured in weeks, but in the transformation of one's lifestyle. Every small step forward, no matter how minimal it may seem, is a victory worthy of celebration because it shows that a man has regained control of his path. Finally, the man who takes care of himself discovers something greater than physical health alone. He finds a new way to inhabit his body and his life. He feels energy flowing more freely, his mind becomes clearer, and his confidence grows day by day. He understands that caring for his prostate was not just a medical matter, but a doorway to a more conscious, balanced, and fulfilling life. That is the true reward of this process, not only healing, but learning to live with respect, attention, and inner freedom.